All right. So this is our big chance. Everybody wave at the camera. Who knows? Maybe some Hollywood producer will look at this on YouTube and you'll be discovered, right? Yeah. So anyway, all right, let's get back to sharing here. All right. So what I want to do today is you guys will be happy about this. I don't have a new assignment for you guys to do today. What I want to do is go back over hip hop part 1 and part 2 in a lot more detail. Basically, after going through people's papers, and I haven't graded all of hip hop part 2. I've only done some of those. I've done all of hip hop 1. I realized that there are some misconceptions and some things that people just aren't quite getting right. And what we're going to do on Wednesday is we're going to get to the main idea of the article, and that's where we start moving towards the essay or the paragraph assignment that we're going to do for it. So before we get to the main idea, it's really important to clear up some of these misconceptions. So what I'm going to do is we'll go over the information today, hip hop part 1 and part 2. I'm going to repost the article for you guys. That way you have access to it all the time, and you'll have the opportunity to go back and reread sections if you need that. So there won't be an assignment attached to it, but trust me, you're not going to be able to succeed at the final project unless you fully understand what the article is about, what the argument is about. All right, so with that, let me go to Hip Hop Planet Part 1. Okay, and guys, I think it's really important at this point, if I'm going to go over the information, but if you have any questions, you need to be bold and ask. Now, I have a limited view of you guys. I can only see about 6 or so of you at a time on my my little Zoom window screen here. So if you have a question, you just unmic and then just blurt it out, okay? Just say, excuse me, I have a question or something like that. And then because I can't see you if you're raising your hand, I'm not gonna see that. But it's important that if you have any questions or something is unclear, that you speak up. We gotta clarify those things. Okay. All right, so question number 1, do you think James McBride is writing about a real nightmare he had? Explain your answer. And I think almost everybody got this one. No, it's not a real nightmare. It's really just a fear he has, a fear that his daughter's gonna come home with this rapper, and it's a guy that he already knows he doesn't like, and he doesn't want her to end up with someone like that. Okay, so what's the point of the story? Well, part of the point of the story is to set up the article and how he basically judged hip hop without really giving it a chance, without really taking time to fully understand it. And so through that, he's learned that he's being kind of a hypocrite. That's an important point because, you know, as he says, back in the day, he was a knucklehead too. So he was just like this kid in his own way. All right, so it's a real setup for him being able to show his changed attitude over time. This is how I was, but this is what I'm becoming. That's kind of the idea there. Okay, now this whole question, number 3, what does McBride mean when he states there would be no Martin Luther King moments in our immediate future? And I know we talked about this one last week, but I still saw several people not quite getting the point on this, okay? Martin Luther King Jr. was about racial integration and equality. So he wanted all races to live in peace and harmony among each other. And so it is a message about peace, but it's also a message about people coming together. In contrast to, the basically what he would probably consider the white racists at the time who wanted racial segregation, but then also the African Americans who wanted segregation as well. And so King's dream was for us all to come together where race simply doesn't matter, where people are judged by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin. That's a line from his favorite I Have a Dream speech. And so it's about peace, but it's about people coming together, people who are different coming together. So in this case here, it's the jazz guys and the rap guys coming together, living in harmony, understanding one another, not fighting with each other, etc. Okay. So one other thing too, and this was a really common misconception throughout. And so a lot of people assumed that McBride and his friend Bill were white. They thought these guys were white and that they are wanting to fight with the black rapper guys. Okay, so it's important to understand Bill and James McBride are not white. Okay, this is not about racial tension at all. This isn't a black versus white thing. This is a jazz versus hip hop generation. This is more about age and generation than it is about anything else. Okay, so and the way that we know that McBride and his buddy Bill were not white is he just tells us. Let's just read this together. You follow me. There were no white people in the room, including Bill and James McBride. Though I confess I wish there had been, if only to hide the paleness of my own frightened face. So when Bill slaps the rapper, the guy with the thug attitude and the muscles popping out, James McBride was frightened. And you know, when you get scared, that's just something that happens. Your complexion goes pale. Your blood rushes from the extremities into the center portion of your body. That's just a natural response to fear. And so basically says he wished there were white people there so he wouldn't have looked so scared with his pale face. And then he gets really direct here. He says, we were Black and Latino students. Okay, so they were all people of color. This is not a racial issue here between Bill McBride and the rapper dudes. Okay, and that was a really super common misperception. And I was thinking about why would students think that this had a racial element to it, especially when it says real specifically there were no white people in the room, we were Black and Latino students. And here's what occurred to me. Let me stop sharing for just a second so I can see everybody. All right, the idea here is when we read, this is really important part of critical reading. When we read, it's really important for us to try and understand the world of the author, the worldview of the author. It's almost impossible when you start reading to not bring your own worldview, your own experiences into it. And right now, in our worldview, in our world experience, there is a ton of racial unrest going on right now, okay, with the whole Black Lives Matter movement and people who are counter-protesting for various reasons, some of them racial, some of them political, some of them, you know, other kinds of things. And it's really easy in this modern climate for us to just automatically assume that race is going to be a big issue because we're inundated with it every single day for the last several months, right? So it's really easy for us to bring in our experience to the reading of something, and then that way it colors our understanding of what's going on. So in critical reading, you have to try and not do that. the goal is to understand the message of the author. The message of the author, what the author is trying to tell us, has nothing to do with our experience or our world, right? It's his experience, it's his message. Now, once we fully understand the message, we have a choice to either agree with him, disagree with it, or just ignore it. I mean, and that's where your worldview and your experience comes in. It's not how we understand his message, but it's how we decide what we want to do with the information. That's where our worldview needs to impact on that decision. But we have to separate our own experience from the actual reading of it. Does that make sense to you guys? Give me a thumbs up if that makes sense. Okay, all right. So let me start sharing again, because, you know, I like to share. Yeah. All right, moving on. He says, what point is McBride trying to make when he contrasts himself and the other journalism students with the rappers who crashed the party? Explain why this might be hard for a group of college graduates. Okay, so again, you know, these are journalism students. And one of the reasons you go into journalism is because you want to change the world, right? You want to illuminate what's going on. You want to influence people and what they think and what they believe and all that kind of stuff. So that's like the goal. That's why you go into journalism. All right. But these guys want to be the storytellers, right? Journalism students. But look what he says here. But the real storytellers of the American experience came from the world of the guy that Bill had just slapped. Okay, who are the real storytellers of the American experience, at least in the South Bronx? It was the rappers. Okay, so McBride and his journalism buddies are supposed to be the smart ones. They're supposed to be the ones who are on the cutting edge of, you know, society and what's happening and all that stuff. But what he realized is that it wasn't them. It was these rappers. They were the storytellers. They didn't have all the stuff that McBride and his buddies had, the degrees, the money, and the credibility, but they had talent. And because they had talent, people were listening to them. So when it gets to the answer here, that's why there's some jealousy on the part of McBride being revealed here. He just spent 4 years getting a degree in journalism and thinking he's the man, and this other guy was the man, right? These rappers. Okay. Question 5, McBride said that rap held everything I wanted to leave behind. In your opinion, what does rap represent that McBride wanted to leave behind? And I think that if I had this question to do over again, I would have done this question in part 2, because part 2 is where McBride starts to talk about the conditions of the inner city, the joblessness, and the violence, those other kinds of things. And that's what he wants to leave behind. Whatever negatives there are associated with the inner city, that's the kind of thing that McBride wanted to leave behind. Okay, now question number 6, what was the real cost for McBride in ignoring rap for 26 years? A lot of people kind of missed this one a little bit. I don't think they got the point that I was hoping they would get in with this question, okay? So for him personally, he missed the most important cultural event of his lifetime. So it's one of those things where once it's passed, once this cultural revolution is passed and he missed it, you can't go back, right? You can't go back and experience that. Now, we probably all have experiences like that in smaller ways, but let me give you an example. So a couple of years ago, Tom Petty, if you guys know Tom Petty, he was a, classic rock guy. Tom Petty was playing at the Hollywood Bowl. And my wife and I liked Tom Petty, and we thought, hey, we should go see Tom Petty. Well, as it turned out, it was during the week, and I didn't, I was working the next day, and I didn't want to be out late. And I just thought, if he's ever back around, we'll go see him then. Well, like within 2 weeks of that, I think it was, Tom Petty died in an accidental overdose. And it's like, I just remember thinking, yeah, like I missed it. Like I had my chance. Why didn't I act on it then? Because I'm never going to get this chance again. That's kind of the idea. Now, that's a small example, really not that important. But for McBride, and McBride's a music guy too, so I think that's part of it. But he missed the most important cultural event in his lifetime. And guess what? He can't go back and relive that. Now, what makes it worse, considering he's a journalist, is that's the kind of thing he's supposed to be looking into. Like he should have been on the cutting edge of this movement, but he wasn't. So both personally and professionally, he totally blew it. Okay. Now, let me just give you a little more background on that question. First off is James McBride is a jazz musician. And there have really been two forms of music that have primarily started in the African American community, and it spread out to the larger society. Okay, the first one was jazz. Jazz was a quintessentially African American music that spread and became popular, and that's McBride's era in music. He's a jazz guy. So in addition to just liking the music and playing the music, there is a lot of ethnic pride in that as well. And so musically speaking, jazz was a much more important influence for McBride in the previous generations. And now the next form of African American music that became popular and widespread was hip hop. And so now you can see like a generational thing happening, out with the old, in with the new. McBride and his buddies were kind of in the center of the the music culture in the African American community, and now they're being left behind, and the center of the culture in music was in hip hop and rap. So he's kind of the old guy being pushed aside, and the new style of music is coming in and replacing him. All right, so I think that's part of why he ignored it, right? It's like an old ball player being replaced by a rookie, you know. So that's kind of the idea. Okay, now before we move away from hip hop part one, do you guys have any questions? Because it's one of those things where the subtle details make a big difference in this article, especially trying to understand James McBride and why this is a big deal to him. You know what I mean? It's not like growing up. You wish you could have grown up during a certain era to listen to that kind of music, but you just didn't. Like, there's no fault in your own. Like, if you really wish that you could have been alive when the Beatles were popular, there's nothing you really could have done about it, because you were born too late. I was born too late for that, because I was just a wee small tot when they were popular. But he had the opportunity and he blew it. Yeah. Okay. Any questions before we move on to hip hop 2? All right, let me share my screen again. All right, let's have a look at question 7. What is the point of the comparison between hip hop and the Beatles and Elvis? In other words, what does hip hop have in common with Beatles and Elvis? When I previewed this assignment for you last week, I talked about this a little bit. And basically, when Elvis Presley hit the scene, he was kind of seen as a rebellious kind of a rebellious kind of a guy. In fact, I was looking on YouTube for old news clips of people's commentary on Elvis and the Beatles, and I found this great one on Elvis Presley. It was kind of long, and so I didn't post it for you guys. But basically, the news commentator, and this was back in the 50s, he was talking about Elvis and how he is, he may be a little bit talented, but he doesn't work hard. He's a little disrespectful. He wiggles his hips in ways that are, vulgar. The guy actually used the word vulgar. And the guy said, basically, yeah, Elvis is popular now, but he's going to fizzle out and fade away. There's no way that this guy's going to last. Well, I don't know if you know Elvis's nickname, but his nickname became the King, right? And so this guy is saying how rebellious and disrespectful and vulgar Elvis was, and how he's going to fade away, was just absolutely, completely wrong. All right, he was the rebel of the day. Moving forward to the Beatles, it was really the same thing. They came over and people were going crazy, Beatlemania. And the adult generation thought, oh, these guys are disrespectful. They've got long hair. Their lifestyle is not appropriate. I mean, all these kinds of things. And so we look at rap today as maybe a little more cutting edge. I can imagine parents saying, yeah, that music is disrespectful. There are some elements of rap that I think anybody would admit that can be extremely disrespectful. And the idea is that they were kind of the same. They were all rebellious in their time. So that's the point of comparison. It's funny though, because you tend to listen to the music you like in high school, you tend to listen to that for the rest of your life. And so at some point, there's going to be like some 80 or 90-year-old woman who is listening to Snoop Dogg, right? She's still listening to Jay-Z or something like that. And that's going to be kind of funny when you think about it. Okay, question 8. In paragraph 7, sentence 3, uses the word moorings. Moorings are anchor spots in the water away from the dock that people can use to secure boats. When McBride writes, hip hop has ripped popular music from its moorings in every society it has permeated. What does it mean? Almost nobody got this one right. And this is a difficult one. And so let's have a look at this in its context, okay? All right, let's just highlight the whole paragraph, okay? Not since the advent of swing jazz in the 1930s has an American music exploded across the world with such overwhelming force. Okay, so it just became instantaneously popular. That's kind of what he's getting at. Not since the Beatles invaded America and Elvis packed up his blue suede shoes has the music crashed against the world with such outrage. Okay, here's the characteristics, okay? This defiant culture, so there's defiance, of song, graffiti, and dance, collectively known as hip hop, has ripped popular music from its moorings in every society it has permeated. What that means is this, okay? Every society has a popular form of music, okay? So let's just say in America, for example, before hip hop came in, the most popular form of music was one of the various forms of rock, okay? From the early days of rock till like the rock that they had in the 90s, for example. And so when it says hip hop has ripped popular music from its moorings, that mooring is a place where something is, a boat is docked and is secured, right? So what it did is it took popular music that was deeply entrenched in the society and it just tore it away and replaced it. Okay. Now to add on to that, he says, in Brazil, rap rivals samba. So samba, according to McBride, is the popular music of Brazil, but hip hop rivals that. It's just as popular as that. In China, teens spray paint graffiti on the Great Wall. So instead of, showing reverence to the communist regime there, they're actually graffitiing on the wall. And in France, it's being blamed for the worst civil unrest the country has seen in decades. So what that means is that this hip hop has come in, it's permeated society, it's infiltrated society, and it's just unstabilizing everything. That's the idea that he's talking about. All right, now let's continue. He says its structure is unique, complex, and at times bewildering. Whatever music it eats becomes part of its vocabulary, and as the commercial world falls into place behind to gobble up the powerful slop in its wake, it metamorphoses into the next big thing. It's talking about the rap's ability to grab onto other forms of music and incorporate and change those other forms of music to fit into the rap songs. So like a lot of times rap songs will take part of a older song and remix it, mix it into the middle of the rap. And so it kind of gobbles up these other genres, it gobbles up these other songs. All right. Question 9. What are the 3 conditions McBride credits for the production of hip hop? And this is really important. He says here, the rap artists come and go, but the conditions that produce them linger. So these conditions that are producing rap continue to live on, which means that rap is going to continue to be talking about these things. So here's the conditions. 40% of New York City's black males are jobless. Okay, so we got a 40% jobless rate among blacks in New York City. Okay, 1 in 3 black males born in 2001 will end up in prison. Okay, so 1/3 of the black males will be in prison. And then the life expectancy of black men in the US ranks below that of men in Sri Lanka and Colombia. So you have black men in the United States having a shorter life expectancy than in some third world countries. Those are the conditions, okay? So you have joblessness, prison, and life expectancy. And I think what he's implying here is that as long as those conditions still exist, then the rap music is going to continue. Sorry, guys, I got cut out there for a minute. I didn't even do that. Let me try and share my screen again, get back to this. Okay. All right, question 10. According to paragraph 11, what is the bad part of hip hop that McBride struggles to embrace? This sentence right here, to confess a love for music that at least in part embraces violence is no easy matter. Okay, so it's the violence of hip hop. He really struggles to embrace that. Okay, and then question 11, what is the good part of hip hop that McBride willingly embraces? Okay, now this is really complex. So if you kind of been fading away a little bit listening to me talk about this, you need to pay attention again, because this is important. At its best, hip hop lays bare the empty moral cupboard that is our generation's legacy. So basically, if someone is morally bankrupt, that means that they have no morals. They can't distinguish good from bad, right from wrong, whatever. And what he's saying is that our community, our world, has become morally bankrupt. This generation of people have become morally bankrupt. In other words, I think what he's getting at is just we view all these evils that are happening and just simply do nothing about it, right? And so he says hip hop at its best reveals that. It reveals the empty morality that he thinks exists in America. This music that once made visible the inner culture of America's greatest social problem, its legacy of slavery, has taken the dream deferred to a global scale. Okay, so basically what hip hop is doing, it's revealing this this social problem that he thinks is still rampant in America, with its foundations all the way back into slavery, and it's bringing the attention to the world. Okay, so what's the good thing about hip hop? It's just revealing some negative stuff that we've been ignoring for some time. Again, this is McBride's argument. We're still just simply trying to understand what he's saying. Okay. All right, guys, do you have any questions on the article?
No.
Okay, so what we do next now is, like on Wednesday, we'll talk about the main idea and what he does to support his main idea. That's highly important. And then from that, we'll start getting into the opinion part, to what extent you personally agree or disagree with his argument, etc. So that's where we're headed with this. I'm going to post the article again. The questions will be embedded. It's not an assignment. It's just there for you to read and, you know, start thinking about this whole main idea. There's no way for me to hold you accountable for reading the article again, unless you actually have something to turn into me. There's no way I can measure whether you've read it or not. But like, you really need to read it again, especially after our discussion, because that will just cement these ideas in a lot more. Okay, guys, if you have any questions, or if you were absent at the beginning of the period when I called names, please stay in, and the rest of you are free to go, and I guess I will see you on Wednesday. Okay,
All right,
Lily,
bye. Have a great rest of your day.
okay, Edwin, I see you. Okay, Lily, I see you.
All right.
Let me make sure I get ready. Let's see, Alan, I already got you. Alan, do you have a question?
Yeah, okay. No.
Okay, guys, have a good one.
You too.
All right. Bye. Thank you.
All right.